It is Sunday, March the 15th, 2026. And been doing my podcast as far as on the dimensions of learning. Now, first of all, my name is Alvin Ruley, and the podcast is The Power of Inspiration. And, I'm doing a series right now on the dimensions of learning. And the spectrum that I'm going to focus on today for the series is personal growth. So, first, let's understand as far as the things related to the personal growth: the mind, the spirit, and the heart. And when you put them all together, too, for the thought of relationship to the personal growth is emotions. Okay, when you have an imbalance as far as with respect to your mind, spirit, and heart, your emotions are going to show that imbalance. It's deep, just to say to you, the mind, spirit, and heart, if you've never gave consideration to them as factors that affect your learning. The mind in itself is where you recognize the process, I'll say, for getting to wisdom. Within the mind, you'll become aware of something, your surroundings, or become aware of something that's going on internally within yourself. And then, as far as process wise, and that's what I like to teach: process. Once you get aware of it, then you'll want to understand, or we'll take the process for knowledge as opposed to go straight to wanting to understand. But everything about learning is wanting to understand more. Okay, knowledge is that point where you get that information, and that information there is going to give you not how to use it technically. When I say technically, it's like, how do you apply it to something else? As far as the skill sets that's coming in with the knowledge. Knowledge is going to, feed you. Let's go with something specific, because, they talk on generalities for trying to explain what how the minds function, and it just don't work. All right, so to deal with something more specific is let's deal with something that's going on right now. Let's deal with politics. Okay, as far as right now, and if you look at the political structures globally, we'll take it globally. Um, Everything's changing. If you look at the media, it's showing you how the world is rapidly changing. It's changing as far as geographically, it's changing economically, it's changing. For the thought of sovereignty, it's changing. Sovereignty being freedom to live as your own country, nation, what have you. As far as democracy is changing, as far as world order is changing. All of those are things that we have knowledge of. Okay, so first we became aware of them because they happened, and they put them in the media and the international web. You can see everything. Okay, so then you go to a point of getting into why. Why are things like they are? That's now why tells you the understanding of them. Okay, the understanding of why are they in Venezuela? Why is Canada and America being like they are with each other? Why are all the countries gathering together to say they want to do this with respect to restructuring the entire global economic system? So all of those are part of the whys. So just still staying with that as specific, and then you go to, you know, that's your understanding when you can say why. Then you go to the specifics a little more as far as going into detail and say, what will my role be as this continues to evolve? That's where the wisdom comes in because, wisdom is taking what you understand about the why, and then you take the why and you create the how. Okay, the why is the problem. For every problem, there's a solution. So the why is global. Okay, as far as the knowledge, but the how is not global. The how becomes individualized because you only have the power, potential, capacity, whatever word you want for limitations, but to do what's within your scope of influence. If you have no influence, then you have no power. You can influence yourself all you want, and that creates your power within. And that's what, dimensions of learning, it gets you to that point where you want to be. Are you recognizing it? You don't have to want to be. You recognize you have the potential, so you go ahead and do what you have to do. So you see there's conditions facing the world. So what do the world need? The world needs someone. And I'm going to step in and say I'm going to be one of the someones, but someone that can educate them on the value of who they are as the world is degrading morally. I won't say the world. As parts of the world is degrading morally. And you can watch, compare with the parts of the world that are uplifting spiritually. You see that in the ones that are gaining their sovereignty and the spirits of the people that are affected by gaining their sovereignty. With respect to, I'll be a little more specific with that as far as over in Africa, since I'm going to be talking about Abraham Traore, it's like what he's doing with respect to solving the whys. Why was there exploitation? Okay, so you figure out the why is like there was exploitation due to lack of education, undereducation, and exploitation came from that result of taking out the knowledge of who you were before we took away your identity. So the how is to re-identify yourself as to who you were. That's being born again, basically. So again, all of these with respect to the dimensions of learning and with respect to the personal growth, it's like since your environment is all around you, eventually it's going to affect you. So how prepared are you? Okay, so going back to the mind, the spirit, and the heart and the emotions. Okay, the mind gathered all this and said, this is all the stuff I can do, but if the spirit is not willing, we start to get the imbalance there. Okay, so how do you get the spirit willing? Okay, first you got to find out why. Well, you have to have a desire to want the spirit to be willing. You know, the spirit within each one of us, whether you recognize it or understand the power of it, you know, the Holy Spirit dwelling within each one of us give us as much potential as we desire if we seek it. When I say potential, as far as your potential to learn and your potential to use the information that you have learned to get to the point of living the information that is relevant to the purpose, your purpose for living, basically. Okay, so you use that information. Now, with me, for the thought of purpose for living, 1980, I got my vision, so the information you're getting from me is stuff that, I'll say stuff, but information that I've gathered, analyzed, you know, for almost 50 years. Okay, so it's like I, I I lived what I'm telling you, and you know, so that's my validation for it. And God saw my life, so you know, I have His testimony. So, you know, my mission is to teach you what I've lived and experienced, you know, so that learning becomes simple to you. You know, the more you understand about yourself, the easier learning is. You know, one thing that I want to focus on throughout the series, but is purpose, understanding your purpose for living, understanding God's purpose for your living. You know, those two in themselves, you know, for the process of learning, you know, going again as far as process being awareness, knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. Okay, but going through that process, when you get to that point of the wisdom, it's like then you're ready. Yeah, I mean your self-esteem is high. You know, because again, for personal growth, well, I don't want to say again because I didn't bring it up, but self-esteem is very important for personal growth. It helps you to deal with reality more because your self-esteem, once you recognize, well, it starts with recognizing that, hey, I am somebody, somebody important, okay? You know, and then you go through that process of recognizing that everything is process. You're recognizing that you're important, and then it's like, okay, you start to motivate yourself because you can see what importance you carry, not just for yourself, but even the importance for other people. And the more you see how important what gifts and talents you carry are important for other people, you get to that point, you you inspire other people. And by inspiring other people, you inspire yourself. You know, it's like you get past that point of just being motivated, you know, based on a situation and circumstance, to the point where you're inspired where a situation and circumstance doesn't matter. You know, the purpose and the mission is what constantly matters. Okay, so focusing on building your self esteem to that level, that's all part of the process of learning. You know, all the information that comes at you is not information for you. You know, but when you understand who you are and where you're going, which is all about purpose. Why do you have your purpose? And how do you accomplish or fulfill your purpose? You know, all of that learning in itself is going to be based on how mentally and spiritually stable you are, But, excuse me, now we come to the heart. So we got a trifold there. Okay, so we come to the heart. That's our center for the emotions because it gives us all of our comparisons to the love that God has for us, that He has instilled within us and shown us that, hey, this is how much I love you. Our guilt or conviction for not, let's go with the way Jesus said it as far as with the last two commandments is like love God above everything and love your neighbor as you love yourself. So when you reach that level of love where you have the capacity to love God above everything else and love your neighbor as yourself, then you get that clarity that brings you peace. Because whatever your heart is communicating to your mind, or whatever your mind is communicating to your heart, it's balancing or looking at the scale of good and evil, right and wrong. Is this what Jesus would do? For me, I'm a Christian, you see, but for all levels of spirituality, it still makes that comparison with love. God's love for you, me, and your love for God and the people. Everything's based on that. So the heart, it balances all that. And if it's not balanced, stable, that balance is not really the word stable. If it's not stable, it's going to affect your thinking. It's going to affect as far as God is love. So it's going to affect your connection with God. Okay, not saying that it's going to lead to your separation as far as sin being separation from God. Then you repent, you come back, and God welcomes you with open arms. But it's going to separate you as far as with respect to feeling and believing the connection with God has the potential to forgive you. So that's dealing with the mind, the spirit, the heart, and the emotions. I'm going to stop right here for right now. And since it's a series, I'll be back and talk about things related to the dimensions of learning. And we'll see how everything goes. Take care and stay focused and learn as much as you can when you can.